Shroud of the Avatar, Forsaken Virtues, was announced as a spiritual successor to the Ultima games, especially Ultima Online. For longtime Ultima fans, that immediately caught our attention. The fact that the title had Avatar in it made that even clearer. After all, that was what the player character from Ultima 4 onwards was referred to in-game, being the Avatar of the 8 Virtues. So, Richard Garriott announced the game back in 2013, and I was very intrigued. The Ultima games are some of my favorite games, and also some of my favorite early gaming memories from the 1980s. Ultima Online was my first MMO, and I played it on and off between early 1998 and 2004. When the website for Shroud of the Avatar was launched and featured a countdown to the announcement, I remember texting a good friend in Norway, someone I had played Ultima Online with, and we were both really excited. So my hopes were high, and I started playing the game in 2014. It was still in a very early state, which was understandable, but I was having fun exploring some of the game mechanics, leveling my character, crafting, interacting with players. However, life interfered and I stopped playing, and when I got back into gaming later, I never felt a strong urge to go back into Shroud of the Avatar. It was fun, but somehow it never fully captivated me. A few days ago, I was feeling some nostalgia and I decided to reinstall the game and play it for a little while. My goal? To start a new character, my old one was gone anyway, and experience the game with new player eyes as much as I could. I didn't remember much from 12 years ago anyway, so I wanted to see whether the game is worth playing for new players in 2026. So, if you are wondering whether you should try the game, maybe this helps. The game is free on Steam, and 3 different monthly subscription models are optional, not required, so you can continue to play for free. Before we get into my experience, the game had quite a few changes and some controversy around it as well. I decided not to comment on that in this video. There are people who have written and made videos about this, so if you want to find out more, you can watch those videos and read those articles. My focus is how does a new player experience the game, and in my case, that's a veteran of Ultima Online and the original Ultima games, which are dear to my heart, so let's get into it. I decided to play offline because these days I'm more interested in the single player experience. You can choose to play online or offline, but, and this is important, you can't do so with the same character. So you either have to level characters in both modes or stick to one of them. This becomes a problem a bit later, as I'm given a quest asking me to visit a certain location. Unfortunately, this location is not accessible in offline mode, which is a bit surprising and results in an unsolvable quest sitting in my quest log. After deciding on offline play, I create my character. The character creator offers quite a few options, even though it is obvious that the game is a bit older already. I don't mind the slightly anachronistic look, but I also ignore some of the rather modern hairstyles or colors such as neon pink or bright purple. With my character finally being ready, I arrive in-game and have to fight my way through an introductory zone. I'm equipped with a bow and therefore stick to ranged combat for now. You have to be rather close to the enemy to shoot at them, and they run towards you while you keep pelting them with arrows, yet enemies usually go down quickly. I then find a lost girl in the burning tavern and agree to escort her to safety. She does help with the fighting, but my bow makes short work of the enemies anyway. By the way, arrows are not unlimited, but are provided in abundance early on by looting corpses or quest rewards. You will also eventually learn how to craft them yourself. Next, I run into an automaton, which is a mechanical NPC offering guidance or services. It teaches me 2 bow skills and asks me to drag them into my hotbar to proceed. I will talk more about the skill system later. A light moment of confusion arises when I arrive at my location, the boat that is supposed to carry us to safety. The guy guarding the boat asks me where the girl is. I'm a bit confused as she has been right behind me all along. Turning around, I confirm this is still the case and wonder a little about the NPC's eyesight as she's about 3 feet away from him. But then he notices her and we leave the first zone. After getting into the boat, I arrive at the first hub, the Solace Bridge outskirts. On my way into the actual camp, I first try my hand gathering plants, in this case, garlic. There is a certain chance to fail doing so, and the process gives me time to ponder what failing to pull garlic out of the ground would look like. Then, I remember that this used to be a thing in World of Warcraft as well, and move on. As you can see, using a skill adds experience to it every time, so you develop skills by using them. This can be rather captivating, as your playstyle determines what skills you develop. You need to level them up to make them more efficient or stronger and unlock more related skills. On my way into the actual camp, I run into some conveniently placed side chests, which I cheekily kick open to take whatever looks appealing. This is stealing, which kinda goes against the old virtue system in Ultima, but hey, I'm a new adventurer in need of better gear, so what can I do? I immediately find a nice ring that boosts my cooking skill. I don't know how useful this is, but beggars can be choosers. When cracking the next chest and picking out a nice necklace, a Justica appears to punish me for theft. But since a zombie is really eager to attack me while looting, the Justica apparently feels unappreciated and disappears. Apparently, he subjects me to a fine, but the text disappears way too quickly for me to read that. I'm busy slapping that zombie anyway. While slowly moving towards the camp, I continue to harvest, steal, and ponder the game's UI. I'm not much of a UI designer myself, but I have to say that it does look a bit unpolished. There are at least 2 different fonts in use here, and the combination of a more medieval style font mixed with the very modern and plain other fonts seems a bit inconsistent. The paper doll I used to switch equipment and see my stats is a bit reminiscent of Ultima Online, but it also looks a bit rough around the edges still. After finally arriving in the outskirts camp, my bag filled with stolen items, garlic, ore, and cotton, I meet a skill trainer who allows me to train more skills. So let's talk about those. One thing I like about the design of the game is that Shroud of the Avatar has a classless character system. You can combine skills freely based on what you like or what makes sense. So you can, for example, wear heavy armor, wield a sword or shield, but also use spells such as elemental strikes or rays of sunlight. In accordance to some classic RPG systems, there are certain disadvantages. The heavier a piece of armor is, the more it has a chance to cause your spells to fizzle, as in, they won't work. These fizzle percentages stack, so if you wear all heavy armor, you may have to cast a spell several times until it eventually works. Still, it's a cool system. You can build a battle mage with melee attacks, heavy armor, and some spells thrown in. Or, for example, go for all light armor, be more agile, and focus mostly on spells with low chance of fizzling. As you can see in the training menu, all the skills are sorted into combat, magic, and strategy. I learn a bunch of skills that sound good, not caring whether there's some kind of a matter, and drag them into my hotbar. As you can see, there are several different layers, and you have to level the basic skills by using them in order to unlock the more advanced ones. You have an overall experience pool, which gets bigger by bonus XP you get from quests. And some of the skills also allow you to level strength, stamina, and intelligence, so it really makes sense to unlock these early on and train them passively. Leveling skills requires using them, and I start doing so while running around. Had I met another player, he or she would have seen a newbie running around, spamming light, night sight, and healing spells all the time while talking to an NPC or going out to quest. Now, speaking of quests, I'm handed the first of several quests by Captain Kinsey. She asked me to calm down a nervous soldier that I ran past on my way into camp. On my way back to him, I'm expecting some kind of a dialogue I have to go through in order to encourage him and bring back his fighting spirit. I'm actually given exactly 2 choices, either saying, "Calm down, you idiot," which doesn't seem very Avatar-like, or, I quote, "Want to talk?" This is what I choose, and just this offer already achieves the goal. This is a pretty bare-bone quest or dialogue design, But I guess this is just part of an extended tutorial to teach you basic mechanics on how to solve quests. Still, it's a tiny bit underwhelming. Confusingly, Preston then asked me whether I have met Kinsey yet, but then again, how is he supposed to know she sent me to him? Cedric, on the other hand, asked me to gather 4 units of maplewood for him. It is here that I run into something that already bothered me back when I first played this. When it comes to lumber, you can only fell a very low amount of trees. Selected ones. This becomes a bit weird when you later visit an entire forest full of trees, yet you can only chop particular ones. I guess you can't see the tree for the forest applies in some strange way here, right? While I understand that it may be weird to just be able to fell all trees, as trees you chop in-game actually disappear until they respawn, this kills a bit of the immersion for me. Let's think back to Ultima Online. In that game, lumberjacking worked differently. You were able to chop any tree. They do not disappear or change visually, but eventually are devoid of logs, so you move on. Later on, the tree recovers. Also, logs are quite heavy, so you have to run back in between to empty your bags or move the logs to your pack horse or mule. Even though this is not optimal either, it is just more immersive. I mean, I'm in the middle of a forest, so I will chop at any tree I want to. In its spiritual successor, Shroud of the Avatar, having to search for the slightly different looking trees just to fell that one is an odd design choice, but maybe that's just a pet peeve of mine, I don't know. By the way, if you wonder about the strange lighting effects in the footage, it is night, which is quite dark in game. I use a spell to give him a night sight, and this results in a rather eerie light, which unfortunately, in combination with these slightly outdated graphics, looks wacky. While I ponder all this and the fact that the big seam on my leather pants sometimes make it look as if my character runs around without any pants, I move on. I speak to Corporal Heloise, who makes some very unfunny comments about her sister Eloise and how their parents were not very creative. And she points out that there are bandits and a nearby swamp, which is the exact same wording several other NPCs used to warn me about this. Apparently, the dialogue system in-game includes quite a bit of copy and paste lines, which may feel jarring to some of you. The swamp must be really full of bandits, because after telling me that the swamp is full of bandits, and I click swamp to ask for directions to it, she tells me it's to the east, but it's full of bandits. I'm getting the feeling I will run into several hundreds of bandits because everyone keeps telling me this repeatedly. By the way, while the keyword system, allowing you to type those while chatting with NPCs, is a nice little throwback to the old days of the original Ultima games, where this is how you have conversations, the buttons below the chat, which allow you to just click those words, makes this more convenient. It also makes me wonder why we can type at all, but then again, you can also try and ask for words that are not listed. Since I've been told about 31 times that the swamp is full of bandits, I decide to calm my nerves by learning how to fish from the crafting trainer and buying a fishing pole from a nearby merchant who also sells other crafting materials you may need. Since I have a very short attention span, I forget to actually go fishing immediately and instead finish some other quests by Sedgwick, talk to the nobles who want me to retrieve a painting from the swamp but it is full of bandits, and then figure out that there is another tutorial available, initiated by one of the automatons standing around. This tutorial teaches me how to unlock chests, teaches me what a stealable item looks like, and that stealing may have consequences, which I already found out through the Justicar that was chased away by a hungry zombie, and how to gather plants and ore, which I've done several times already. I leave the tutorial with some extra new items. Next, I check out the different crafting tables which are conveniently placed around the camp. Crafting seems to be an essential activity, as there are crafting stations for tanning, weaving, tailoring, smelting, forging, cutting logs, carpentry, butchering, and cooking. You need resources you gather, combined with crafting materials such as curing salt, wax, or coal. Fortunately, the game provides you with the essential crafting tools when you start out. Note, though, that these have endurance, so you have to repair or replace them eventually. After picking up some of the equipment from the blacksmith to ready myself for melee combat instead of archery, which just seems more fun to me, I decide to finally relax after all that input by going fishing at the river next to the camp. You fish by putting a lure into your hotbar, clicking that with the fishing pole equipped, and then aim at the water. If fishing is possible, the fishing cursor goes blue, which is a bit confusing as the helpful fishing guidebook I'm given says it will turn green. I double check, consider whether the weird night sight colors have caused me to go colorblind, and proceed to fish. While waiting for a fish to bite, I check my email, take a look at my social media channels, and consider getting my ebook reader. This gives me time to take another close look at the UI, and I notice that the date and time below the radar say Sunday, August 8th, summer 7432 DC, midday, first quarter, moon clear calm, which somehow reminds me of some of the horribly long item titles on Amazon and eBay, such as pasta dish, 12-inch pasta microwave cooking housewarming gift, kitchen, fine dining. Even though my fishing success chance is at only 22%, I managed to fish up catfish on my first attempt, and I already feel like a legendary fisherman, which suddenly makes me think back to Ultima Online again. I notice a soldier who's been watching my fishing attempt from a distance, making me feel slightly uncomfortable with some grade A stalker vibes. I walk up to her and proceed to gather clay for more lures. Apparently, she chooses this moment to walk over the clay deposit, but is stopped by me chopping at it, which makes her walk into me for several seconds while emitting weird growling noises. I proceed to hack at the clay as I'm convinced I have to run into some crazy feral soldier and it's best to avoid eye contact with those. Then I start to feel sorry and I talk to her. She introduces herself as Flatter and tells me that the fish aren't biting today. I feel slightly guilty because I just fished up a beautiful catfish on my very first attempt. She also tells me that there are bandits in the swamp. At this point, I imagine a bandit population of about 3 million, based on how everyone reminds me about this. Since she has said that fish won't bite, I decide to test this and stand right next to her, fishing for the second time. Apparently, she wants to see me fail just like she did and stands right next to me, which makes me feel very uncomfortable again, but I just focus on my fishing pole. I pull up a cod with her staring at me with a hurt look in her eyes. I promise I don't do this out of spite. Neither does the cod. Apparently, seeing me easily pull out the second fish with the success chance being low and me being a total noob at fishing, she turns around and stands with her back to me, which is either a very weird NPC behavior coincidence or incredibly well-designed passive-aggressive NPC scripting. While I wish it's the latter, I'm afraid it's just a funny coincidence. Now, in order to make her feel even worse about her inferior fishing skill, I move away a bit and cast my lure again. With a chance of about 20%, I easily pull out a sunfish. I glance over at her, but she's still giving me the cold shoulder. In order to not cause her to growl at me or even attack me for being the better fisherman, I move on to continue my quest. I hand an order to Sedgwick and I'm asked to bring him feathers, pointing out that there is a nearby farm with chicken. This confuses me a bit because I thought whether this is in a different zone of the game, but I later learned that this is in the Solace Bridge outskirts zone the camp is in. There is a world map and instant zones like Tones or the outskirts I've just left. You may run into random encounters on said world map too. As you can see, there is a lot to explore, but first, I decide to go back to Solace Bridge, where the game began. After all, I'm now better equipped, and I want to see whether there's anything else to find. Well, it turns out that there is, as I run into another one of those very rare trees I'm allowed to chop. So I do that, yet I'm interrupted by some skeletons who don't want me to enjoy my rare find. I try out my new sword and shield, plus the new skills I trained, including a fist strike which added fire, and I easily killed him. When casting spell attacks, my character says magic words to cast, including Ignis for fire, obviously, and Reno, which is not a teleport spell to a nice emerging city, but my healing spell. Again, the attacks and spells level up through use, so fighting feels kinda rewarding, as I not only get loot but also improve my abilities. The loot is nice for selling, and I learned later that apparently you can salvage some looted equipment for more crafting materials, which is nice. After slaying the skeletons at the bridge in revenge for them attacking me in the tutorial, I decide to go back to the world map in order to visit Salt Town, which is mentioned by some of the NPCs before. There, I am greeted by a guard captain who's wearing samurai armor and holds a katana. He tells me to visit Castle Addis. I mentioned this earlier. Unfortunately, this quest is not doable in offline mode, as Castle Addis is only available in online mode. Since your characters are tied to the mode they're created in, this is slightly frustrating, and maybe either be an oversight or a mistake by the developers. In the actual town, which consists of some palisade walls and like 4 buildings, I managed to find the bank automaton, which lets me access my bank box, which is another throwback to Ultima Online, but I also learned deck building from SLT3855. Now, here is the other thing about the gameplay in Shroud of the Avatar. You can build combat decks and sort the abilities of your choice into them. You can freely mix and match the abilities you have, yet of course have to mind the weapon you have equipped, so mace attacks will not work if you wield a sword. You can put different abilities in several times, and the higher level they are, the more often you can put them in. There is a limited amount of slots in the deck, and while at first you can pretty much throw everything in you have, it becomes more tactical later, as you have more skills and the amount of skilled users the more you level them. Playing this way, the game randomly moves skills from your deck into your hotbar. If you don't trigger them, they eventually disappear and are replaced by another attack. So it depends a bit on luck whether the attack you want to use right away is available on your hotbar. Should you want to cast a heal and there is none currently on the bar, you have to use other skills and attacks hoping for the heal to appear next. This does add a bit more variety compared to the strict free attack mode, where your action bar always stays the way that you set it up. Now, you may wonder, why should I even use this mode if I can just stick to the static bar and the abilities I choose to put in there? Well, as far as I understand, in deck building mode, abilities use slightly less focus, aka mana. That way, you don't run out of focus easily. Also, there's comboing. If you, for example, have 2 thrust attacks rolled into your deck and you cast them both in succession, they are stronger. Also, skills have cooldowns, which sometimes can be rather long. If the same skill is put into your action bar from your deck at the same time, you can cast them one after the other without waiting for the cooldown. You can switch between deck mode and free mode eventually, and you can build your own custom decks and activate them. If you prefer the static MMO mode you know from World of Warcraft and a gazillion other WoW clones, you can use that. If you want a more dynamic, a bit less predictable mode with advantages regarding focus use, cooldowns, and damage, you just use the deck. While this may seem weird in concept, like, okay, my character knows all these skills, but in combat he can sometimes not use them because the deck does not show them at that moment, think of it like a real combat situation where certain situations may make the use of a special attack impossible for a moment. Or maybe I'm just overthinking this. However, after unlocking the deck mode, I stick to it for the remainder of my game time, as I kinda like this. It feels fresh compared to the static MMO mode. I train a few more skills and run out to the White Guard Foothills, another adventure zone, to try out my new deck with fighting wolves. Due to me wearing some pieces of heavy armor, some of my spells have a chance to fizzle. You can actually see the success chance of the attack glyph in your hotbar. Using Ignite Weapon for the first time is really cool. I felt like that guy from Game of Thrones who lit a sword on fire. When a heal is on the bar, I sometimes cast it even at a high health, as I still want to level those skills, so instead of auto-attacking because there's no attack available, I just cast a heal to level that. Even when fighting 2 wolves at the same time, I'm doing well, so I start to feel stronger, combining melee strikes and all kinds of elemental attacks. Those are used to unlock the later spells for the basic one to be replaced eventually. While field dressing those wolves I killed, I again checked my email and social media channels, as it does take some time at first to accomplish the process. Then again, even though I have never hunted, I assume field dressing a wolf corpse in real life takes longer than a second as well, right? As my 2-hour time limit that I set for myself is starting to run out, I go back to the outskirts camp to try my hand at crafting. Mark that this may take a lot of materials. Creating only 1 ingot of iron or copper needs 4 pieces of ore, and as I only got like 1 piece per ore node, there isn't much I can do. Fortunately, when you for example craft arrows, which need crafted arrowheads, wood and feathers, you get a whole stack, so it's not like you need a whole log per arrow or something. I managed to smelt an ingot, which also requires an ingot mold. I really like that, as it adds some realism and the molds can be bought from the crafting merchant. And after all that hard work, I managed to finish to fish with Fleta once more. She sits next to the river, apparently still not being very successful. When she notices me, she gets up and hides her fishing pole, eventually walking away. Again, coincidence or shame? I really don't know. Thus, while calmly fishing at sunset ends my revisit to the world of Shroud of the Avatar. So, what do I think? Does this fill the gap left behind by Ultima Online? Probably not. But to be fair, that's a very big gap to fill. Also, Ultima Online is still around and now in its 30th year, which is kind of remarkable in itself. Shroud of the Avatar clearly carries some of that heritage in its DNA. There are references, the terminology, the angst, the classless character system, the bank box, the keyword dialogue system, and some mechanics that do feel like they're trying to do something a little different. At the same time, it's also obvious that the game still feels unfinished in several ways. Not just in terms of content, but also in presentation, UI consistency, quest design, and overall polish. It looks rougher than I would expect from a game of its age, and some of the seams are very visible. And I do not only refer to the seam in those leather pants that made it look as if I'm not wearing pants at all. And yet, I did have a little fun. Not because the game suddenly revealed itself to be some hidden masterpiece that everyone else unfairly overlooked, but because there's something oddly compelling about it. Leveling skills by using them is satisfying. Experimenting with builds is fun. The deck system is unusual, but I did end up liking it. And some of the awkward NPC behavior and odd little moments give the whole experience an almost accidental comedy that I honestly enjoyed. So, where does that leave me? I would not say that this is the great Ultima successor many people once hoped for, but I also would not say that this is completely without any charm. It is a strange game, uneven and rough, and the player base seems to be rather small, but every now and then there's still a faint little spark of magic in there. Since it's free to play, trying it out costs you little more than some time and curiosity. And if you are something like me, someone who still has a soft spot for Ultima, old RPG systems and slightly awkward worlds with interesting ideas, then maybe that alone is enough reason to take a look. And if not, well, Britannia is still there, Caesarea is still there, Ultima Online is still there. So, one way or another, there are still worlds to return to. For me, this little revisit was worth it. Not because it rekindled some grand illusion, but because it reminded me of where some of my fascination with these games came from in the first place. So, thank you for watching and see you next time.